Good morning. Nancy here with North Star Ministry. I hope everybody's enjoying their beautiful, beautiful day. This is really a special day. And I'm going to share with you why in just a moment. I'm going to continue to read from, snippets that I picked up in the book of Hosea, the book of Joel, that apply for today. But I'll continue in the book of Judges as well. But, it's a very important time that we're in, as I've mentioned before. And, I just want to share a little bit about myself. All my life, I come from a large family. There were 9 of us, right? There were, with mom, dad, 11. You learn a lot of patience. I've talked about before, you learn a lot of patience. Growing up in a big family, you learn a whole lot of things in a very relatively short period of time. Growing up, you learn patience, number one, and learning to share and to be creative, because when you have little, you use what you have, right? So all these little traits, everything was indicative of where I am today. It all applied, it all counted, it all meant something towards my life. Of course, when you're starting out, you don't know these things until you grow up and you learn that life, this earth is all about lessons, right? And that you choose the lessons that you're going to go through. It's part of your soul contract. You know the parents you're going to have, you pick the circumstances, you pick all the lessons, the challenges, the things, that those crossroads that you're going to come across at some point in your life that are going to create those situations that you go through. You go through it, as I've said before. But all throughout my life, including grade school and elementary school, the middle school and high school, I had a wonderful time in high school, by the way. I mean, I had a wonderful time, but I kind of sensed, sort of perceived early on that I was always kind of God picked me for something. I don't know. I was always like the one who, for instance, in high school, we went out for the drill team. There were like 245 girls, and 45 girls were chosen, something like that, for the drill team. And it was it was really, really fun. I mean, I really enjoyed my high school. It was 2 years of drill team, being in all those parades and competition with all the other schools. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful time. You learn discipline. There's a lot of things you learn through even some of these extra curricular activities, these after school activities. You learn team spirit. You learn how to be loyal to your school, and it's all very positive. It's all very, it all applies to your life as well. One of the things that I learned, ever since those days when I went from drill team into junior varsity cheerleading, things like that, you learn how to work together as a team with other people, for one thing, but you also learn how to always look for the welfare of others, and always wish the best for others. You come away with a lot of gratitude and a lot of inspiration. And one of the things that is part of my lifestyle ever since then, I've always been very active. I've always been, fitness and walking and being active on my feet, and doing a lot of things, activities that are conducive, my aerobics and stuff like that, swimming, aquatics, all those things are a very important part of my life that I picked up early on. So a lot of those things shape you into the person that you are, right? All these experiences that you have. And then, of course, but my main reason had never been ever for attention or accolades or anything like that, for popularity. No, nothing to do with that. If anything, had to do with the fact that I had 4 older sisters. And if I didn't have, back then money was tight, and, you couldn't afford school clothes, oftentimes your own clothes, you were going to have to wear what they wore. So it could be something handed down from 4 sisters that came before me. And so that was the big motivating factor in my trying out for cheerleading and for song leading and drill team, that took care of, the clothing problem. Because when you're in a sport like that, you have to you have that solves part of the problem. Like twice a week, you got to go to pep assemblies. You got to wear those uniforms, and that was a slam dunk for me. I loved it for that reason. I loved it for everything else too. But what I'm saying, even in my senior year, I remember that I felt kind of bad because there were a group of us that tried out for song leading, varsity song leading, and there was there was a girl who wanted to be it so bad. She wanted to, I mean, her heart was bent on being that person. And and I was only interested in the uniform. But I kind of felt bad, it's disingenuous. And I thought, well, already writing for the school newspaper, the feature editor for 4 years, so I figured, well, maybe I shouldn't be it this year. I'm just going to go ahead and give my pom-poms and my uniform and my my little boots, to that girl, because she wanted to be it so bad. So I gave it to her, and I let everybody know that I'm just going to pursue my, stick with my writing for the school paper. But, even in that, I was selected by the school to represent the principal, like singled me out and selected me for writing for as an intern reporter for the local newspaper. And I thought, wow, but once again, because there are always these little things where I was singled out. Okay, singled out, whether it was like there was one person with the perfect score and I overheard and it was my number. So there were always little things that kind of told me that, somebody up there is really keeping an eye on me. And even when I wrote for as an intern reporter, I remember when the Dodgers came to town one time, I got to interview all the Dodgers, and they came to they were playing against our school, our high school. So it was an exciting thing. So I went to cover it. I met all the Dodgers. I met Tommy Lasorda. I met Davey Lopes and Ron Say and what was the name of Rick Monday? And there was Chuck Yeager. There was somebody else. What was his name? I forgot what his name was. But anyway, it was a thrill. It was a thrill for me. I was a big Dodger fan back then. I used to go to the baseball games and all that. So it was a very exciting time. I had a cameraman, Dennis. He wore this big, huge thing over his head. He took pictures and all that. I probably did a lousy job interviewing them. Didn't get very far. But one thing that happened then was the person that traveled with him, the marketing director, I guess, I don't know what his title was, but he presented me with an offer for a job. That was my first real job offer to work, to travel with them to all the games and take, I don't know, stats. I've never done anything like that, or take some sort of notes. I'm not sure. I don't remember, but it was quite a, it was an honor to be asked and offered. And he gave me his card. And I remember breaking the news. I was so excited. I went to my mom and dad and I told them about it. And my dad said flat out, no. So I said, what do you mean no? This is a big opportunity. And oh my goodness, he said, no daughter of mine is going to travel on a bus with a bunch of horny baseball players. And so you look back and you can see and understand. But back then, I must have cried my eyes out for 2 solid weeks. But the point I'm trying to make is that it was just a time in my life where I was singled out. There was something that told me, God was really getting my attention. He was really letting me know that he had his eye on me somehow. And it was unmistakable. It was undeniable. I knew it. I perceived it. I picked up on that very big time. And there was another time my friend was in a beauty contest, and I went there to be supportive of her, just as somebody that came to be in support of their friend, watching the beauty contest. I wasn't part of it at all, and I never had a desire or even thought about being in something like that. But anyway, then I was approached by Mayor Tom Bradley's. He sent them over to speak to me, about representing the city of Los Angeles. Well, I didn't live in Los Angeles. I lived in Simi Valley, it was Ventura County. So, but it was just another interesting thing is I had been singled out, kind of noticed or talked to or offered. And so I just picked up on that, and I thought, wait, God wants me to do this. But I mean, he had his people take me to dinner, and my girlfriend, who was really wanting me to do it, Nancy, please do it, and if you do it, I'll do it too, and that kind of thing, and so I didn't, against my, I didn't really want to. But they were sponsoring. It was $500 for a sponsorship. They sponsored me on the spot, and I guess, well, I was cornered. It's like, everybody was like wanting me to do this thing, and I guess I caved, but I didn't want to, and but anyway, and then my friend couldn't get a sponsor, so I tried to stick her with them. I said, look, she's going to take my place, and they wouldn't have it, and so anyway, but I didn't want to be in that at all, but I'm just saying that these little things have happened, through my life, and I just found it was interesting. Even when I was in the aerospace industry, I worked for one company for 4.5 years, and then at the end of that time, I was approached and recruited by another aerospace company that I had never even heard of or knew about, and but they came and asked me if I would come in for an interview. So it's just interesting the way things happen in my life. It's like I didn't really, I thought about it, and I thought, how come this happens to me? In the back of my head, I always kind of wonder, but it just seemed to me that God had his eye on me. And so anyway, long story short, here we are today, and several months ago, I finished a 23-year marriage. My husband had met someone new, and that's all right. I'm completely forgiving, and God places people along your paths for reasons. Oftentimes, they're for learning things about ourselves. He'll put someone that reflects what you are either lacking or what you have to change. And if you are sensitive to that little understanding, you can pick up on that lesson, and it's like a light that goes on, a light switch, and then you say, oh, I get it now. The person wasn't meant to be with me for the long run, but he was meant to be with me for the purpose of the time that I needed to learn my worth, because I used to be quite a people pleaser, and I had to stop that. God had worked in me to let that go, and to also cut off anybody that does not appreciate you or see your value or worth or tries to demean you in any way, because God let me know he wasn't going to allow that any longer. So clearly, there came a day he said, enough, I want you to leave here now. So when that day came, God gives me a clear indication. I throughout my years, I had been able to pick up on when God instructs me to do something, that is it. I get up and I do it. So the very next day after my husband told me that he was no longer the very next day, I went and filed for the divorce, and that was it. I mean, I love my children very much, but I surrendered them to Most High to take care of them and to keep them safe while I went and started my new chapter. And I was like really crushed too, because I was so happily married. I was very, very, into being a very domesticated person. I loved cooking and baking and being with my kids and helping them with their homework every night and all. I was into my marriage. But when God says no, he saw that I wasn't being valued. And so he said, no more. So I said, okay, all right. Now, back then, he said, but Lord, you said what God brings together, let no man put asunder. But he let me know that he had not brought me together with that person. I had settled for someone, and so did he. So we both had settled. Yeah, everybody settles for one reason or another, but I remember back then, I had worked for so many years straight from high school, and I was already 36, and it came the time, I was wondering, I want to have children. I always knew I wanted to have cats of kids because I grew up in a big family, and I knew what a happy childhood I had. It's like the funnest thing ever. We didn't have much, but we had a lot of fun. And so I thought, well, one thing I know is I definitely want to have children. So I guess I better start now. And so we met, and we decided to. We were both at the same kind of crossroads. We decided to take the plunge and get married, and we began to have our family like the very following year. I was 37 when I gave birth to Daniel, and then I was 42 when I had Jonathan 5 years later. So I mean, I had two at least, but I always wanted more. But anyway, and so excuse me, and so it was just when when God has always like let me know when it's a time to go, a time to move, a time to the same thing when I have my child in a school, a certain school, and God wanted him, he didn't want him in there. It was time to come out. It was a church, but it was time to come out back then. I didn't know that, but he definitely let me know. Really unmistakably, I mean, the fear and trembling, that kind of thing. It was like heavy. I went immediately, got up during the day as it was still school time. I went straight there and took him out of that school. When God tells you to do something, you do it. He's always spoken to me that way, very unmistakably, very undeniably, and so, and full trust, trust in him, because he will test you and he will put you through it. And when you take up your cross and follow him, it is a journey. And one of the hardest lessons I've learned in my Christian walk was total surrender. Total surrender. It's like when he puts you through the ringer and you don't know why, and you don't know why he's not doing it to anyone else. You don't see that they're going through it. It's like, why are you picking on me? And it's like this real stubborn, adamant frustration. It is like teeth clenched and fist fighting. It's like when Jacob was wrestling with that angel, and he was wrestling and he wasn't going to let up. He wasn't going to let go. He was like, this is the kind of last 5 years of my life. When I divorced my husband, it took me 6 years of martial arts training in West Coast Krav Maga, 4 days a week, and sometimes the nights too. I show up in the mornings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings. And it was 2 hours minimum, and then at nighttime, sometimes twice a week at night. So it was a lot of training and a lot of testing, and a lot of kicking that bag and beating that mat. A lot of my that internal turmoil, working it all out, getting all of that out of you to come to a place where you are, you've regained your self-esteem, you've regained your self-confidence, you feel better about picking up the pieces and moving on in your life. Okay. But it took 6 years, Then I had the black belt test, which was that was the day. It happened on the anniversary of my dad's passing. And I tell you what, that morning, I didn't think I was going to make it to my black belt test, because, and I think I've spoken of this before, that Thursday night at the Sunset Market was so busy. It was in the middle of summer, very hot weather. Everybody's out there at that market. It was super busy. I had my Italian ice cart there, and it was busy, busy, busy. And I didn't get home till like 12 midnight, clean after you clean everything up at the kitchen. I was renting a kitchen, and then driving 50 miles back home, and going to sleep. It was just exhausting. And then the next morning was that Supergirl Pro. It was some sort of competition, a worldwide competition there at the beach, and really big, huge competition. We had to be there like at 6 a.m. It was all day and all night. Once again, another really exhausting day and night. So as my cart was down at the pier in for about 6, 7 years, I really had fun with that little cart. I tell you what, I got a cart for each of my sons, but neither. Well, Daniel helped me with this one, but my other son wasn't interested. But I tell you what, that little cart was a busy little cart. We used it to the maximum. And but I remember the night before that black belt test, there was like no way. I didn't get any sleep. I was exhausted, and then we were going through the divorce. So I was sleeping on the sofa, which was a very narrow sofa. It was so uncomfortable, and you couldn't move around. So I only had like literally maybe 4 hours of sleep. That was it. And we had to be there like for testing, 5:45 sharp a.m. And they're strict, you can't be late at all. So I woke up at 4 and I thought, oh, there's no way I was so exhausted. I had no energy. I was completely drained. But then, and I told my kids, I called them and I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't have the energy. I'm completely exhausted. But a miraculous thing happened. At that point, when I dialed, I was going to wish someone else good luck in their test today, letting them know that I wasn't coming. I could not push the button to send that message. There was tremendous restraint. I remember using my other hand to forcibly push my finger to send that message, and I couldn't do it. Then I had an influx of all kinds of thoughts coming into me. There's no way that you are not doing this. Get up, and get in that shower. And it was like forceful, it was like hearing from ancestors and my spirit guides in heaven and archangels. And I mean, it was like a heavenly realm that encircled me and told me, you are not doing this. Get in there, get that shower done. You are a warrior in the Lord's army, and there's no way you are not doing this little test, right? So I thought, wow, I don't know where these thoughts came from, but I got in the shower and I was brushing my teeth at the same time, and I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. All I know is I'm showing up to an F5 shit show. That's all I knew. And so I just got dressed, no coffee, no food, nothing. And I drove straight there to get there on time. And I was the last one that got there, but I rolled in and they were all shocked that I had even showed up because I was also the oldest one testing. I think I was 59 at the time. So here we did, and it began, and I'm telling you, that day was an ordeal. It was a 10.5 hour grueling test. I remember at one point, it was 108 degrees, and the entire test was held at 3 different compounds before it wound up at the studio in Temecula for the last 2 hours. But everything else was done outdoors in that grueling heat. I remember there was one of my sparring partners, boxing partner. He even got blind. He was actually did the whole test blind because when they squirted that stuff in our eyes, oh my gosh. But anyway, it was quite a test that day. And it was ruthless. There was somebody, though, at one point that had to squirt some gel, but luckily that helped me continue in that test. No energy, nothing, and no coffee. And he squirted that gel in me, in the corner of my mouth, to get it in me. And that really helped me. Wow. But I remember as they were stuffing my vest full of rocks, right? 25 pounds of rocks in my vest. We had to go up this slope and come down it like 3 times. This really ragged, it was a rugged slope. We had to go up and come down. It was quite a test. But I point this out because I tell you that day, my ancestors made themselves known. My angelic realm and my spiritual team made themselves known to me that day, that I was not alone. And I had no idea. So it's like really kind of a miraculous thing that happened, and it's hard to put into words. It really is, but that's a true story. That actually was my black belt test that day, and it was 10.5 hours, so it was a long day. You had to go up these. They took us to one high school doing. Oh my gosh! And the turf felt like needles going through your hands, up and back, 3 different times, and it was the whole football field. It was grueling. Okay. And then running up where you were going to be attacked by gun, by knife, by fighting. It was just an amazing test, and you didn't know how they were going to come at you. And at one point, when they blindfolded us, we were tied with that tape. What do you call that? Not masking tape, but the other kind of tape. They tied your wrists, together tight 3 times around. And then stuck our hand. We were blindfolded, by the way, too. Stuck our hands in this ice for like a minute, just frozen, solid, can't feel anything. And then in a moment, you had to. They took the blindfold off, squirted your eyes with something, and you couldn't see anything at all where you were going. And you had to bust through and go through this. Or you were attacked every which way, blind. You had to fight blind. So, but that's where Leonard lost his eyesight. He was in the hospital for 3 days with patches on his eyes. Oh my gosh! But anyway, it was quite an ordeal, quite a test that time. But that was the day that my ancestors made themselves known to me. Anyway, from that moment on, I knew that I had a soul contract where I was to break generational curses in my bloodline. I didn't know that before. Okay, and so, but anyway, so long story short, the Lord had set me apart to be studying and showing me things in His Word. And he called me maybe about like when I started my YouTube channel. I had been under a lot of heavy nudging from the Lord to answer the call. There was a definite, direct answer the call, and to make sure I wouldn't do the beach again. The plate was removed when I went to plug it in for the new system. It just kind of smoked and almost blew up. I unplugged it right away, and I told the Lord, okay, I get it. You don't want me to do another season down at the beach. I get it. Okay. So from that moment on, He had me kind of tucked away to be learning from Him. He was showing me all kinds of things. He was teaching me many lessons. I mean, stuff that you would not even think, but they were all spiritual lessons. He was really speaking to me loud and clear about a lot of different things. About my life was going to be changing. He let me know. He wanted me to learn humility and surrender and obedience. Things that I kind of wasn't probably the best at early on. I was always very independent in my thinking, always very adamant about, and I've always been self-reliant my whole life, independent, kind of did my own thing. I never looked at consensus from anyone, but I began reading the Bible in my mid-30s, and God had gifted me with a lot of understanding. I mean, people would come to the front door to have these conversations, right? And I would just share with them, well, that's actually not accurate. This is what it actually meant and what it means. But so we always had these in conversations. It was good practice for me, but I didn't realize that God had given me the ability to understand a lot of His Word. But it wasn't meant for me to keep it to myself, of course. I'd always been sharing, freely giving as I freely received. Wherever I would go, I would always be there to hand out God's Word to different people and so forth. But He taught me patience as well, because He was stretching me. He was stretching me. He was really working on me. picking me apart, and really, really stretching me. Sometimes I felt like I was Jacob myself, just wrestling with God and why, just being kind of impertinent, maybe obstinate, maybe stiff-necked, maybe just, and I would have these, you know, anger episodes like, leave me the hell alone. On occasion. I'm not kidding. But he worked through that. I have to tell my story the way it is. But, it's all about having faith in God and surrendering my will. That was the hardest thing to do. Because I had my own plans. I had the things I wanted to do. I had a zillion and one things. Of course, I give God all the credit, because he's the one that placed all those ideas in my head. But and all those things required money, right? So I was always short on cash to make those things happen, make all my dreams come true. But, and then he let me know other people have been stealing what belonged to me. But everything plays out the way God means it to play out for his purposes. I was placed in the paths of people's lives who were tested, and they were, I was like a reflection to them, and some of them couldn't stand me for that. But like in high school, when I was set apart for doing things, and the other kids saw that I was, picked for that and got to represent the school, and, they didn't like that. I was in drill team and cheerleading and all that stuff. They didn't like that at all. There were a lot of jealous kids at that school. But I didn't hold it against anybody. I love everyone. But it wasn't reciprocated, and that's okay. I have grown all my life to understand that, I was not here to please people, and everyone's entitled to their opinion of you, and I don't have to speak or I don't allow people to define me. I answer to God. That's it. But there are always going to be those that hate you. And when they try to, like in my life, they always try to find things about me that they could, use to rip me a new one. But, not finding anything, because I don't have a toxic lifestyle. My journey has been all about learning and following God. They would create stuff. They would make it up. They would make stuff up just to be able to have something that they could say. And they would use it often enough to where people believed it. And that's the really tragic thing about, how people so easily fall for things like that, But I was never one that was easily duped like that. I could see right through people. And that was another gift that God had given me. So I just stay away, But anyway, but faith in God, when he put me through a lot of lessons and to test my faith, it was all testing. It's all testing that you sign up for when you come here and incarnate on this planet. But, he dismantled me completely and tore me down, like my pride, my ego, that my need to control things, my need to have all the answers, my need for this or that. He wanted me to learn from him and surrender to him, because when you take up your cross and you follow him, he wants to know, do you mean it or not? What it all boils down to, do you mean it or not? Is it fake? Is it real? Are you lukewarm, or do you really mean what you profess? And of course, with me, I'm like very loyal. I'm like extremely loyal. If I make a commitment, I stick with it no matter what, So like in my marriage, it was 23 years, would never dream about doing anything to, bring a problem in our marriage. But it's just that the other person's not happy. When they're not a believer, you got to let them go. When they're not happy, you got to let them go. You wipe your feet against you wipe the dust off your feet and you keep going, right? What can I say? But with full forgiveness, though, you just always wish that other people would be happy. And not everybody can be as happy as you, because when you have Christ in you, you have joy in your heart. It just increases from there. So, but allowing him to pick me apart is surrender. God wanted that 10% time. He wanted that 10%, that, because the 10%, your left brain, that consciousness, that is what dictates your actions and what you do in your life. And if you're holding to that, if you're doing everything else, but you're still not surrendering that bit that God wants you to surrender so that he can work in you to will and to do of his good pleasure, because he created you for him. Created you for himself, to have fellowship with him, to have companionship with him. And but you've got to give up that 10%. You can't keep back part of the price. Otherwise, you're lying. You don't really mean it with God. And I really meant it with God. And so I realized that. But he taught me. It was one of the things. He set me apart. Other people think, oh, we isolate. Yes, we isolated her. She's alone. Nobody helps her. No, this is altogether God who set me apart for himself to teach me things that he wanted me to learn. And but it was a terrible, it was grueling. It was tough. I mean, you wanted to know, will you forget? He allowed a series of events to unfold in my life. But, but I have to realize I signed up for this before incarnating here. These are all the lessons that God wanted me to learn so he could use me for something he had in mind. Of course, you're always the last to know, right? So, but you need to, he wanted me to let go of my need to control things. He wanted me to let go of what I wanted, what I wanted, what I set out to do in my life. He wanted me to let go of my will, surrender my will to him so that he could use me. But it all required trust. So really difficult things. He wanted to dismantle and tear down my pride. Okay, and pick me apart, like I said. But, I wanted to know, after everything is said and done, after we do all of this to you, will you forgive? It was another huge test. And, I fought with that one. I thought, I want to do this, I want to do that. But no, and I'm so relaxed about it. Now I can tell you, after going through all of this mudslinging and everything else, this defiling of my name and character, everything they did to me. But, will you release your need to know all the answers? That was a big one. That was a real tough one for me. Will you let go? Will you lay all your burdens at the feet of Jesus and stop worrying, stop being fearful, stop being doubtful, stop thinking about that? Will you let it go? And will you trust in the one you say you claim to trust? Okay. And will you turn away when we do this or that to you? Will you turn away, or are you still going to believe? Or will you have faith? And will you continue to believe in me? And these were the things, these were the questions, these were the trials, these were the tribulations, these were the challenges, these were my adversities, these were all the areas that God was bringing me through. And after going through all of that, and meeting these crossroads in my Jeep, I mean, I tell you, there were times that I thought, what the hell? I mean, to have these long talks with the Lord. Lord, I've surrendered all to you and I have nothing more to give. Why do you persist? But, there was always more. Whenever I thought there wasn't any more, there was always more. And he uncovered it, every nook and cranny in my heart, every hidden area, everything that I forgot about, and he brought it forward, everything he wanted to purge and lay out before me. And oh my gosh, and I've never been one to cry a lot in my life, but I've been like a regular ball baby. I mean, it was like a faucet turning on and off. This is how he brought me through all of this. And I want to tell you, because God is so real, and he has put me through all of these things for his purposes, because he had in mind something that he was going to be needing me for, even though I didn't know, even though I didn't understand. It's like those months ago when he told me, answer the call. And the Lord he had always given me from day one, he'd given me the ability to understand a little bit. I'm not saying that I understand more than other people or more than most. No, that's not at all what I'm saying. Because I never looked for accolades from anyone, or recognition. I'm a hermit. I'm like someone who loves to spend time alone. I'm very happy alone. And but God changed that too. He said, "No, you're not." I said, "What do you mean, Lord? I'm happy. As long as I have you with me, I know I'm never alone. I never feel lonely. I'm very happy." He said, "Nope. Well, I know what he knows the areas in my needed growth here on out, because it's all about growing. No matter when you think you've learned all the lessons, there's a lot more to learn. And so he knows what is meant for me for here on out. So I know he has someone lined up for me, even though I'm like opposing this. Is like, you have me all wrong, Lord. I don't I'm not looking, I'm not seeking, I'm not asking, I'm not, this is not where I want to be. I mean, I'm moving forward, but I'm quite content alone. This has been my latest argument with the Lord, but he says, no, there's a slew of other lessons I want you to learn. You've always managed yourself. I want you to learn how to allow someone else to be a companion to you, because all my life I've never known anybody that truly got to know me. Okay, so apparently he has someone that is, I don't know how like I said, but this is all together God's doing. Anyway, fast forward today. This God has a way of, throughout all history, in fact, when you look back, God has he's raised people up for his purposes throughout all of history. He raised Esther up, to be put in that before the King Ahasuerus, at the time when Haman had a day in which he had issued and published throughout all the land that he was going to destroy all the Jews of that time. And God raised up Esther and Mordecai, at the last hell moment. God, that King Ahasuerus took the ring off of Haman and put it on Mordecai, and it was a shift in balance. It was a shift and change in the balance of power. God raised Esther up to be the queen. During that time, God he raised up King David. He was the youngest. He was a shepherd boy, and God used him. He was very meek. He was the seventh. The son of Jesse, okay, and God also raised up, Samuel as well. Samuel, and he raised up Saul. I mean, he brought throughout history. He brought Joshua, who led the people across the River Jordan during that time, and they marched around Jericho, and he was a type of Christ. So they were all a type of Christ. Christ, you take up your cross and you follow the Lord. The ultimate goal, as you attain a Christ consciousness, where you put all things under your feet, and Christ abides in you, the hope of glory. Okay, that is like something that every believer wishes to attain. As we take up our cross and we follow Jesus, and we do the inner work, and we learn from him, and we grow from him, and he teaches us, and we're open. You have to have an open heart, an open spirit to the Lord, and decrease, like John the Baptist said, I must decrease as he increases. So you have to decrease so that the Lord, make space for the Lord to increase within you, to do the inner work, because he's the one that does the work. He performs the work within you for his purposes. Okay, it's all about for the purpose of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God. But yeah, throughout all history, he raised up Joseph. His brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites. They were jealous of Joseph for God's favor over him. The same as they were jealous over God's people throughout. Saul was jealous over David. Okay, God's people have always been put through it, because of the jealousy, and it hasn't changed. It's just the nature of how things are when you are a bearer of light on the planet. There are those that don't like God's favor over you, and they give you a hard time. I've gone through it myself. People probably saw God's favor over my life before it even registered with me. I mean, I always kind of perceived that I was singled out for something, but I didn't quite understand or know what. But yes, throughout all history, he does that for his purposes, because they each had a purpose. They each had a mission that they were to fulfill. Solomon, David, and of course Jesus, when he came, he's the sacrificial lamb slain from the foundation of the world to make perfect atonement on behalf of all those that he came to save. And so everyone had their purpose, their mission, their mantle that they were to carry out in their lives. And but at this particular time, in this time when the world is very, very dark, and God always looks at the heart, and if you surrender, if you're in full surrender to him, that you make space for him where he can use you, he can be used of you, and in your prayer life as it strengthens, in your spiritual walk. And I know right now he's bestowed some spiritual gifts upon me. And he has issued the command for me to rise and to go out there and to speak with authority, because he has given me his word, and his Holy Spirit. So he abides in me. So as I go about, and it's been really interesting and very, it's a privilege and an honor to be used of God. Number one, I want to say, because certainly the kind of leadership for today, when he places you in a position of leadership, as he has appointed me, he's anointed me, and he's given me this mantle to speak out on his behalf, and he will use me for that purpose, which I completely make space. I've totally surrendered and learned all my lessons. So but I certainly, being a hermit, I had let the Lord know, absolutely. And I've never sought for popularity or for recognition or attention or any accolades or applause or performance or anything like that. I simply obeyed the Lord. When he called me, told me to answer the call, and I put together this YouTube channel, right? And I began to read the Bible and give the sense and break it down so that people could understand, because I recognize, the Bible's not an easy book to understand. It's just that he's always opened my understanding to some of what he was teaching. And I always double check with him to make sure that it's accurate before I